Hey Eagle fans, I'm Thomas Mott. Welcome into Philadelphia Eagles Now. A complete draft breakdown coming up here in just a couple of seconds. First, though, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel as we get closer and closer to night one of the NFL draft. It's it's Wednesday when I'm recording this, meaning tomorrow will be 2 weeks away from night one of the draft, so plenty of news leading up to that. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Go down below and do it right now. All right, Eagle fans, as mentioned, of course, in our start, we're doing a full breakdown of the Eagles in terms of draft picks and also draft needs, as well as some players Philadelphia should look at to go ahead and fill those draft needs. This is your one-stop shop. If you just have a question about, okay, give me just like a 10-minute breakdown on the entire Eagles draft, this is your video. Stay tuned. Here we go. All right, let's start with the draft picks, right? How many draft picks does Philadelphia have, and where are all those draft picks? Well, they have 11, the most of any team in the National Football League for this year's draft, and a lot in the earlier rounds. Let's jump right into them right now. Of course, 12 overall, the one we're all very curious about. What will Philadelphia do there? That is their round one spot. Round two, they have number 37 overall, and then 2 third-round draft picks. A lot of ammo to move up in those second and third rounds. 70 overall, and then the 84 one, which, of course, is the Carson Wentz one. So whoever they pick at 84 overall will forever be tied to Carson Wentz because of the trade, so that'll be interesting to go ahead and look at. They had that 4th round draft pick via the Miami trade back, sitting there at 123. They have 1 5th, and then they have a bunch of 6th round draft picks. So 189 overall is their first 6th one. Then they have 224 and 225, back-to-back picks in the 6th round there. Those are both compensatory picks, followed by 2 in round 7 at 234 and 240. Now, what all does this mean? It's very simple. The Eagles have tons of ammo in terms of the draft. A ton of draft ammo, which I think they're going to use to trade up. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to trade up into the top 10, which has been rumored and discussed. Maybe you move up if Patrick Surtain, or maybe even like a Jalen Waddle, or even Devontae Smith were to fall a little bit. I think they're going to stay at 12 and take the best player available. But you could see a very real scenario where they package both of their thirds and maybe a 5th or a 6th and come back into round 2 to give yourself 2 second-round draft picks. So having 11 total picks is a ton of ammo. I don't think they're going to draft 11 total players, so look for them to make some probably day 2 or day 3 trades. And if that's the case, then I think Philadelphia's going to be very active in getting the right players for this year's draft, just because it's an important draft overall, and they got to nail this, and I think that they're hopefully going to. All right, let's get into draft needs. Now, you can debate what is the biggest need for Philadelphia overall in terms of the draft, although I think it's very, very clear that wide receiver needs to be, if it's not 1, it needs to be 1B. We'll put it here at number 1 because I still think as you look at the Eagles' overall roster, they have a massive hole at wide receiver. And it's not just because they of Jalen Reagor not turning out to be good. I think Reagor can be good this year, but even if Reagor turned out to be really great this year and was their number 1 wide receiver, they still need help right now. You don't have Alshon Jeffrey, you don't have Deshaun Jackson. Didn't do much anyway, but still, those are 2 older receivers who at times could have been good. We don't know how good Travis Fulgham is going to go ahead and be. We appreciate Greg Ward. We need more from that position, though, and so I think wide receiver becomes the number 1 need and has been on this football team. Now, had they been at number 6, it's very simple. I mean, the first round would have been cake. It would have been Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith, whoever was available, take the best one, move on. Sign still delivered, get the card up there, give it to Roger Goodell, and you're done. With them being back at 12 now, it gets a little more tricky. At 12, you can take the best wide receiver available, which might be Jalen Waddle, and we'll talk about him here in a second. But if Waddle's not there at 12, I see a scenario where they take cornerback, which we'll talk about here in a second, at 12, or linebacker, and then take a wide receiver with their number 37 overall pick, their first pick in round 2. If that's the case, maybe Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota were to fall. He's a really great wide receiver that we love here at Philadelphia Eagles now, but my big second-round guy is Terrace Marshall, who I think will be there. The 6'3 wide receiver from LSU is a great option as well. Back to Waddle. Waddle is one of those 3 players that we keep an eye on for number 12 overall. If he is there, I would have a very hard time believing Philadelphia would pass up on him. However, in the Waddle, Patrick Surtain, Micah Parsons discussion, those seem to be the top 3 options right now if they're all there. And I don't know if Waddle's 1, 2, or 3 based on what Philadelphia wants. I do want to say again, I think wide receiver is the biggest need on this football team, and they must address it with either their first or second round draft pick. There is no excuse not to. Let me ask you guys this. What is the Eagles' biggest need? Before we get into the 4 next biggest needs, in my opinion, as we rank them 1 all the way down to 5, what is the Eagles' biggest need? Go down below. There'll be a pinned comment. I want to hear from you. All right, so as I mentioned before, you can move some of these needs around. Like if you don't think wide receiver is number 1, you can probably agree it's 1B. But I think number 2, which could very well be 1B, right? Wide receiver 1A, this one next would be 1B. I think cornerback is a massive need in this football team. And like I said, it's right up there with wide receiver, although I put it at number 2. Now, The Eagles are in a better spot for a cornerback, though, which is important to go ahead and note here. When they were at 6, it was clearly the best spot to take a wide receiver. Now being back at 12, this is a really good spot to go ahead and get probably the top cornerback in this draft. If Patrick Surtain is there at 12, the cornerback out of Alabama, you take him instantly. That's done. I would almost take him over Jalen Waddle if the both of them are there, both obviously from Alabama. However, if Surtain is not there, you look at a guy like J.C. Horn. He's a very good cornerback, had a great pro day, and I think you could go ahead and take him at 12 and feel very good about pairing him with Darius Slay. Other options for later on in the draft, you have Greg Newsome, Asante Samuel Jr. see ranked there at number 5. He's a great prospect. You can get him at number 35 overall. So I think we are getting to a point where it's becoming increasingly clear that Philadelphia's best option is taking either wide receiver or cornerback in the first round and then taking the other one you didn't take in round 2. So it feels like wide receiver and corner will be their first 2 picks. And if you can get 2 starters with those first 2 picks at those 2 positions, boy, Philadelphia just got a lot better both offensively and defensively as well. Okay, before we go ahead and move on to number 3 here, if you want to wear the official draft hat of the Philadelphia Eagles, well, guess what? It's out right now. So the draft hat that whoever they take will be wearing whenever they walk across that stage and, I guess, fist bump Roger Goodell because of COVID. I don't know what they're going to do. But whatever. Either way, this is the official draft hat. You see on your screen right now, chatsports.com/Eagles draft is the place to go ahead and pick up this official Eagles draft hat. As you see in the link down below in the description box as well, they have a ton of different sizes in terms of trucker hat, fitted hat, or even a snapback, but these are the official Fanatics Eagles draft hats. You can go ahead and pick them up. Again, the link will be down below in the description box. Whether they shake hands, fist bump, this is the one that they're going to be wearing, and honestly, it's one of the better ones we've seen. Last year's draft hat was not good at all. This one's a lot better. I encourage you guys to go and pick it up where you can rock it just like the new players in Philadelphia will be rocking it as well. Okay, let's get into number 3 here. I think the third biggest need in this football team is linebacker. And now, it was probably a second or even first biggest need prior to them signing Eric Wilson. I think getting Eric Wilson goes a long way in probably utilizing Philadelphia and these saying that they're not going to get a linebacker very early on. I think the perfect draft scenario would be corner at 12, wide receiver at 35, and then linebacker, whether it's like a Nick Bolton or a Zaven Collins or Jabril Cox there in the 3rd round. If you can get one of those 3 in the 3rd round, I think Philadelphia has a killer draft because then you get another linebacker because we don't fully trust the linebacking depth chart right now, even with the addition of Eric Wilson, but you still don't put linebacker ahead of bigger needs like cornerback and wide receiver. Parsons is obviously an option at 12, and maybe they fall in love with him and take him, and I honestly wouldn't hate the idea. I'd rather have Surtain or Jalen Waddle, but again, wouldn't hate Parsons, but there are some really good linebackers that I think you can get in the 2nd or 3rd round, like a Bolton, like a Collins, or like a Jabril Cox, to the point that, when I talked about earlier, why not trade back into round 2? That way you have 2 second-round draft picks, and you can get, your wide receiver, Terrace Marshall, and then Jabril Cox's LSU teammate, and then you have your cornerback, you have your wide receiver, and your linebacker with the first 3 picks. I would be honestly thrilled with that, and I hope Philadelphia were to listen to this, and that way they can go ahead and have the best draft possible. Okay, let me ask you guys this before we go ahead and get into the final 2 needs here. Should the Eagles draft offense or defense in round 2? Type O down below for offense, type D down below for defense. Let me know what you guys think down below right now. All right, number 4 here, as we get into the lesser needs, but still important, 4 has to be defensive end. Now, it's not that big of a need because you still have Josh Sweat, and it looks like you're going to have Derek Barnett as they went ahead and got his 5th-year option, and he's going to play at least 1 more year in Philadelphia. Obviously, Brandon Graham coming off the Pro Bowl year. They don't need a pass rusher, but they should look to add a pass rusher, and we shouldn't hate the idea of them drafting one earlier on in this year's NFL draft. I think corner, linebacker, wide receiver, all much bigger needs, but you couldn't scoff at them taking a Gregory Rousseau or a Jason Oweh or a Carlos Basham out of Wake Forest if they were to fall to the right spot. Again, maybe they don't go linebacker in the 3rd round and they go pass rusher. I wouldn't hate that because, again, Philadelphia a little bit older on the defensive line from a Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham standpoint. I like Sweat. I think Sweat's going to have a great year this year, but I think you cannot hurt this football team by adding another pass rusher who hopefully can go ahead and blossom into a future starter. Okay, before we go ahead and keep going, again, make sure you guys are subscribed because I think things are going to continue to grow, maybe even a Zach Ertz trade type caliber of grow as we get closer to the NFL draft, and so stay subscribed here as we will keep you guys up to date here on the channel, so make sure you hit that big red subscribe button down below. Let's get into the final one here at number 5, and it's probably offensive line. Now, as the offensive line sits, it's not in any way bad. I think the offensive line looks pretty good right now, and I like all 5 starters, especially my Lotta starting at left tackle. Although Dillard, maybe he wins the battle. Who knows? Best man win. That's fine. I think you would go offensive line later on in the draft for just depth in general, and for the idea that, Kelsey's going to play one final year. Lane Johnson's been banged up a little bit. They've not been able to stay healthy, so I'm fine with getting an offensive lineman. I just don't think it's that big of a need to where you would have to get one way early on. And most of the guys you see on your screen right now are going to go early, as Slater and Sewell and probably Darrisaw are all going to go in the first round. But there are a lot of other good interior offensive linemen you can get in later rounds of the draft, and I expect Philadelphia to take one at some point in this draft, just because, again, the starting 5 is good. Behind the starting 5 is a little sketchy, even though a lot of them played last year due to injury. But I would like to go ahead and continue the pipeline of having some good young offensive linemen to grow and learn behind the great offensive linemen they have right now. So it's down there on the needs. It's not a big one, but it's definitely on there at number 5. I think you're good at running back. I wouldn't mind taking one at some point in this draft, but I don't think it's going to be big enough to go ahead and make this list. I think safety is really good to go, especially when McLeod comes back healthy. I love the Anthony Harris signing. And other than that, you get a quarterback to be a backup, hopefully not early on, but backup in the later rounds, that's fine too. But wide receiver, corner, linebacker, D-end, O-line are the top 5 needs, and I'd be very surprised if anyone would disagree with that. But I'll read the comments, as I always do, down below. Ultimately, for today here on Philadelphia Eagles Now, I'll end on this. Who will the Eagles draft at number 12 overall? Let me know your best guess as we get closer and closer. 15 days away from night 1 of the NFL draft. We'll have full coverage here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. For the channel, I'm Thomas Mott, signing off for the rest of your day.